A few people called or wrote to tell us they were sick. Whatever that awful thing going around, it's catching up with our commission. So why don't we start? I think we've got enough people to get going, and as the others come in. I'll be facilitating the meeting tonight. It's the Wednesday, February 16th, NCEC Committee, the whole meeting. Here's the agenda, and if people just want to take a quick look at it, any suggestions? If you'll break it to be 7:05, we're going to have it, maybe it should be 6:37. 6:50. Are there any other, I would change that to 7. I don't know how 7:05. Any other suggestions? All right. So looks like we have consensus on the agenda. I forgot to start out by saying this is a public meeting, but it's not a public hearing. So members of the public are absolutely invited to observe or record as they wish, but we will not be taking comments from the public at this meeting. So with that, we have two, we have the January 12th COW notes. If people have a chance to look over those, any comments? Do you have a question?
No, just acknowledging that our last meeting coming up.
Okay. Any comments about the January 12th, 2011 COW notes?
Just a quick question, Robert. When I read through these, when I read the past thing, I didn't realize that these aren't minutes, they're notes. This batch seemed more disjointed than it has in the past.
Well, batteries ran out on my keyboard about halfway through.
Okay.
Trying to catch up after that point, so they probably were, yes.
Okay.
Battery effect.
Any other comments?
Well, you got the typo on PAM, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the document, plan for PAM.
Plan for
Plan
PAM.
for PAM, okay.
Mr. Facilitator, would it be helpful, and since I know that one of the two meetings I facilitated had some issues about when he decided, would it be helpful for us just to maybe put in bullets at the conclusion, kind of like next steps or action items as a
Decisions?
process?
Oh, going forward?
Right.
Yeah. Sure.
So
That's a
we're all
great
in
idea.
agreement. And I was trying to watch that over and over
Yep.
on line.
Yep.
Just to, keep it
Okay.
discussion.
How do people feel about that? I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
For those who have. So I'll try and point out when I think there have been decisions and agreements. All right. Any other comments about the notes, the January 12th notes? Is everybody okay with those? All right. So it looks like we have consensus, and that is a decision that those notes are approved. CPP submissions. Maybe we can catch up with this. I sent out a note to people on Google Groups. I don't know how people are doing following all the threads that are going on. If you are, great. It's kind of a challenge because of the way Google Groups starts out, when you start a new subject heading, you're off for a different thread. But I sent out a note, and did people have a chance to look at it, what we're trying to do with these CPP reviews tonight? If not, I can just, what we're trying to do is have an opportunity to have us be able to ask staff questions about submissions, CPP submissions, to give them an opportunity to go back if there is agreement that there is an issue or a question. It might just be a question. We go back to the neighborhood organization and talk with them. They may provide some clarification to Robert, who would be the person who's doing that. Possibly they resubmit something if they can do that, if their organization and the time permits. But the idea is to just allow us to do the due diligence, and if people are not here tonight, they can still do that in the NCEC meeting. So we're trying to find a way to process the CPP submissions in a more predictable manner than our first run of them. So I guess if you have questions about any of the submissions, this would be an opportunity to bring them up. If you haven't had a chance to look through them, you can always do that at next week's February 22nd meeting. Yep.
So I'm starting to notice a trend in these applications, and it made me think that this is sort of something for us to consider in the future, like next year, is that you'll see applications where underrepresented groups represent actual cultural communities, or you'll see that they are renters, right? And I mean, it's very distinct in certain communities that they don't have the same challenges that other communities have. Mm-hmm. And I just wonder if in the future we have to start weighing that more heavily, because there's, and I have, my first-hand knowledge of this is that I have both in the community that I work for, but reaching out to cultural communities, there's a lot bigger and greater challenges, even when you think about having your staffing be bilingual, than there is with just renters or any kind of transient population. And so it's just glaring in these applications, and I think that for the next year that we do, that we're going to have to start thinking about.
2 through 4 years?
Yeah.
2 through 4 years?
Yeah. I won't be around when that happens, but
well, that's
just
great.
noted
So
that.
did you sort of get the motion there that Melanie was?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Yeah,
I should probably say just 2 other things. The reason why we're taking time, the facilitation committee thought it would be worthwhile taking the time to do this in the COW is Melanie's point is exactly one of the reasons is we talked about that we would be reviewing and refining the program, and by reviewing these at the COW, it gives us an opportunity to make comments like that and raise questions that hopefully will lead to a better or improved programs, refined program for years 2, 3, and 4 and beyond. So Well, and Jeff?
Would it make sense, since there's 4 communities, to just kind of, so we don't jump around, let's just go, Bach County, Calhoun area, Cleveland, just go boom, 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 and see if you have any questions or issues or concerns?
Sure. Do you have that list in front of you? I have the list of, I have that list in my spreadsheet. How do people feel about that? You may want to move my spreadsheet again. Huh? All right. Jeff?
I was hoping to be able to review those online. Unfortunately, I don't have an access card, so I don't have copies with me. The one issue I saw before, and I did look at everything online, was Echo's bylaws item, which appears gives their board authority to require dues, but not that it has been implemented. Robert gave a more than detailed explanation on that.
And that was online.
Yeah.
So can you give a very short summary of what that explanation is, and then maybe we can point people to where the more detailed explanation is?
Yeah, and actually just to kind of quickly broaden that, I mean, just going through a lot of the bylaws, they're not alone in that. Oftentimes when I see membership, I think there were a couple of other submissions where I had that same kind of a question where, oddly enough, and this is something I've actually often seen in neighborhood bylaws, is they'll often say how somebody qualifies to become a member. You live in the neighborhood, etc., but they don't say how you actually then do become a member, right? Sign in a meeting or whatever, and that's actually something that's missing. So we don't know how they become a member, and are there barriers? Have they set up some other kind of barrier? And that's sort of a question. I usually try and assume the other way that they're probably doing the right thing. But with those ones that have questions, that was a good example of that. There were 2 or 3 that kind of concerned me specifically about that issue, rather than just being vague, implied. Another one was, I want to see it was, Echo, I'll think of it in a minute. But they explicitly said it was actually have to be, they maintain a domicile.
Yeah.
And I kind of scratched my head at that one too, and it's like, well, what does it mean to maintain a domicile? So I think kind of the way that Bob Cooper and I have been approaching this is really at a contract level to say, almost in effect, regardless of your bylaws, you have to have open in your participation. People have to be able to participate in committees, essentially. And I think what we need to do is talk to them about potentially changing their bylaws for next year. I do have one group actually right now that's been jumping through a lot of hoops to change the bylaws for this year. I'm actually trying to slow them down. I think it's creating some tension in the group. But that's been our approach is look, don't try and fix it this year. We'll make some kind of contractual provisions and, at least have it fixed by next year.
One quick additional is the point was, in the Portland document, the under-engaged versus under-representative terminology was used to sort of put the onus, if you will, on the city, I think, on engaging as opposed to people becoming representatives.
Correct.
That's all I have.
Yep, all right, so let's go through these. I'm gonna come
I
back.
have a question.
Sure.
The 14, is that including the ones who needed to consult further with staff or get further assistance?
No,
And so we're not doing updates on that?
no, we'll do those if we have them available.
Again, I was gonna say, I could do like a quick 1 minute update of the two that we didn't do last month if you want, it would only take a minute.
Okay,
But,
sure.
Actually, there's 3 last month where we did different actions on the funding. NERC, we approved a $20,000 provisional contract with them. We had a $134,000 allocation. We have met with them. We are going to be meeting again with them in the very near future. The discussion was really about helping them position the organization to move out of being a housing developer and some of the debt that's associated with that to being a strong functional neighborhood organization. I would say that they were, 1, surprised that we were willing to work with them on that, and 2, very open to doing that. So the plan is that we're going to meet with them, I think it's next week or the week after, I think it's next week if I recall correctly, put together a plan and come back to the NCEC in March with what we're planning on doing for the rest of the year. So that invitation was welcomed, and they need capacity to do it. And they said that we would throw the department's capacity behind them in order to make them functional and help them get functional. They drive it, we'll provide some of the connections that they need. Second one was West Bank Community Coalition, which is more of a conflict situation with the Cedar Riverside NRP. We met with them on Monday. West Bank Community Coalition will likely be coming in with a new application in March. We went over a number of things that were deficient in the first application or concerns that were raised, as well as an agreement between Cedar Riverside and West Bank to have a joint committee to develop a working relationship that will address concerns between the two organizations, define the roles of each of them, and allow that community to move forward. And that first meeting will be scheduled for March 9th. So that one's coming up. And then the last one was East Phillips and Robert. I have not talked to anybody at East Phillips yet. And did you get the clarification?
Oh, yes. Yeah, basically, the big question we had is they had this large item in there for donations.
Yep.
It was like several $1,000s for donations. It wasn't clear what that was for, and how it really led to community engagement. So basically, I asked her to be clear on really how that was leading towards donations, community engagement, and really what she was talking about with that was more about they partner with these organizations to do outreach in a very unique way to under-engaged groups. The idea was that they would provide these small organizations support to help them with that engagement of under-engaged groups.
And I think we see that in other neighborhood organizations as well, like Wake Park, but not quite
At the level of detail.
So can I talk about NERC and then West Bank, those groups? So they've got, it sounds like, all this work to do before they're going to be sort of actively engaging the community. Is that true?
You're talking about NERC?
NERC and, because West Bank and whatever the other name is, they're going to be working on a joint committee.
Right.
But that all sounds like capacity stuff as opposed to the community engagement work. Am I wrong?
Well, let me, NERC did a strategic plan, and they're moving, and they want to become a community engagement organization. They spent a lot of their capacity in the past in housing development.
Were they CDC?
They were both, yes.
Okay.
They were both. And so we're going to help them deal with the debt and kind of the legal structure that some of the issues that they're running against there. They've already defined that they want to become a community engagement organization. They really define block clubs as being their kind of vehicle to do that.
Okay.
So we're going to step in and help them negotiate some of those pieces in place. strategically looking at where we apply the CPP funds, both to build capacity and also to address past debt. So they're already engaging and they're moving in that direction.
Okay.
But at the same time, we still got to deal with these tentacles from past activities, so we're working on that. West Bank Community Coalition is the engagement organization of the neighborhood. Cedar Riverside NRP is the NRP organization for the neighborhood. And the meeting that's coming up is to really understand the roles of each so we don't duplicate that. And making sure, in essence, there's a lot of tension in that neighborhood and distrust and holding each neighborhood accountable as opposed to fighting with each other. So West Bank has agreed to include accountability measures in their proposal. And I talked to Cedar Riverside staff person today, and they're coming to the meeting and basically trying to put that agreement in place. Cedar Riverside is already doing engagement. I think they can, we can build that better. West Bank Community Coalition is doing the engagement piece, and the Cedar Riverside will do the admin of phase 1 and phase 2 activities. But we need to define that to make sure we're not doubling. So.
Thanks.
So I guess I'm still confused, but are they, in our process, we're talking about a set neighborhood area. Are they fighting for who that is going to be within NCEC, I guess I should say?
It's kind of a long story. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but basically, West Bank Community Coalition is a neighborhood organization. Several years ago, there was issues regarding the administration of phase one plan, which now they've gone into phase 2. So NRP, with agreement with West Bank, set up a new organization to do the admin of, to do the development and admin of the phase 1 and phase 2 plan. So in essence, two groups were created. Conversations with West Bank is that they see their role as being the community engagement organization, and Cedar Riverside sees their role as being NRP phase 1 and phase 2 administrators. And it's really going to be defining those roles better so we don't have overlap. But whoever we fund will be the engagement organization, and West Bank is the one that wants to be in that position as of right now. Although I would say, we still, through this discussion, we'll define that first. So
Okay, great.
basically, there's conflict, and we've got a structure in place to start addressing this conflict.
Something I failed to mention, but verbally here, but I did do in my note to all of you that this process that we're doing here tonight with these submissions is not a substitute for the approval process, because that decision-making still remains with the NCEC. And as I said, it's not a public hearing, so we're not asking the organizations to answer our questions or speak. We're going to ask Robert to go back and work with them. And hopefully see just what we're seeing with these, that the program actually promotes some positive change along the lines of their program purposes. One other thing that I should mention is staff is reviewing, adjusting the monthly submission deadline so that applications going forward would all come and be ready for us by the COW meeting. All right, so I'm going to run through these. If you have a concern, stop me. Otherwise, I may keep going. Kara, and I actually have some concerns myself here.
Could you start with Botman?
I'm sorry. Botnu was so good, Botnu?
My question on Botman is their insurance redundant to the insurance that we provide? All our costs.
Are you looking at the budget line item?
Yeah.
I'd have to ask them about that. I presume it's general liability and non-auto. I know some groups have been kind of hedging their bets, saying we don't know if there's going to be insurance in place.
So Doran, that's a great question, because there's insurance sprinkled through a number of these.
Yes, that's a common question.
Is it listed as, I didn't see that listed.
It says insurance.
I'm going through a lot of this right now. There's workers' comp, general liability, and then there's directors and officers, and so that would cover any number.
And I think in the past, at least with my neighborhood, we tried to include that under employee benefits. And maybe that's just a...
That
This is
Ours
different.
is one simple line item for insurance, but it covers 3 times.
Okay.
Yeah, NRP covers the directors and officers. That's just one of the kinds of required insurance. General liability, non-owned auto is another type. One of the issues that actually came up in the contracts, kind of, none of us were expecting it. Somebody at the city gets decided to insert an additional new kind of insurance that we haven't seen before. It looks like it's a form of D&O insurance from what I've been reading. What we've been telling neighborhoods is don't worry about that right now. Some of those things we're saying, just kind of ignore it, because it has raised questions. And we're gonna try and straighten it out at the city, because I'm not sure why they're requiring this.
Dorn, is it sufficient that, the general question of insurance for those that?
Yeah, I think we should be, I want staff to be, reaching out to those neighborhoods who have insurance as a line to say, you may not need this because here's what the city is providing. If yours is an addition, fine.
But the city's never gonna provide general liability or
Yeah,
workers'
and
comp.
what I'm saying is those 5 things that the city does provide, which doesn't include that.
Okay,
I just want to make sure that they're not.
but they know.
Joe?
I wouldn't say never, but the insurance meeting that was held at another agency, the commercial general liability was discussed as an item, along with the nonprofit management or directors and officers, as it's commonly called.
Through the other agencies, insurance policy, which provides a blanket D&O, they did talk about it. They have an option out for neighborhoods to apply for that blanket general liability non-owned auto as well.
All right, anything else on dot now? Great. And that ticks off a couple others, and it also touches on some questions I had about insurance. Carrick? Cleveland? Did something about Cleveland?
No, I just.
Okay, Downtown Minneapolis Neighborhood Association?
I want to know.
Yes, me too. So, Bill and Dorn?
For me, there was 3 items in the budget. There was budget membership dues of $2,500,
Yeah.
professional services of $20,000, and then the insurance again of $1,500. What I've done for all these, as far as for the budget, if there's an outlier, if it just kind of seems above, vastly above all of the others, I kind of have put the last response. So those 3 items in the budget.
Okay.
I didn't have a problem with the professional services because I thought that was just another way of saying staff. That maybe how they hire them.
I would like to know what that is. It's so big. This is one of those things that I think, as I said when Melanie raised her question, when we get to refining the program, I think we'll be better at asking people what we really want. They're responding with the stuff that we gave them, so I don't think we want to have them go through hoops, but just get some clarification on that.
Yeah, related to that, I actually had put footnotes in there that indicated, staffing, for example, the staffing item was for including professional services for that kind of thing. So we'd be sure that this was staff. A lot of neighborhoods have been kind of ignoring footnotes, so
Okay.
we have to remind them of that.
Anything else on downtown Minneapolis?
You got the membership and dues.
The dues and memberships, I specifically want to know to do what?
Yep.
Other neighborhoods have put in
I'm with
dues
that.
memberships to reach out to communities that they don't, business associations that they can't engage through their processes, so that's how they do it. And that's what I'm assuming, I just want to make sure that they are intentionally doing that.
What's the number again?
2,500.
How much, sorry,
What was the question?
how much over is there a separate line for staff?
Yes.
Not the downtown.
Most have these
Oh,
staff. They actually have.
For downtown. So, staff,
Sector down.
yes, yeah.
Oh, Christie Rock was their staff. Sorry.
This is the downtown.
Yeah, they do have
there.
staff, yeah.
They do have staff.
Oh,
Christie Rock, it works for a couple of organizations, Northeast Parks away.
So there's the,
Staff plus the $20,000 for professional.
that's what we're trying to get sorted out.
the staff number 0.
Oh,
They didn't
okay.
pay any staff.
Oh.
Okay.
They just picked that up, so that's how I read it.
You can keep it. All right, those were my 2 same questions. Anything else? Yep, I'm
Well,
sorry.
actually, I just want to check that, right, and they had these 3 program budget line items, and I wasn't sure if people talked about that because I don't think that program was part of the program.
Yes, and so I'm going to back up. I do have a question on that. I would like to know the arts, what did I say? The 2 that I was wondering about, arts, culture, and education, downtown development. I made an assumption the crime and safety programming budget was something that you know, whatever they're doing with block clubs, there was some sort of community engagement element. I couldn't, from the application, draw that same sort of correlation between arts, culture, and education, line item $2,500 in downtown development for 10K.
There's no description. in the-
I just couldn't, there
wasn't really a bunch.
I couldn't
What is
figure
their
it out.
CPP allocation? Is it 42 or is it 62?
Two neighborhoods. Downtown east and downtown west. One is 20,047.58 and one is 42,091.66.
Issue, to me, there's issues with the downtown neighborhoods as well as Lawrence Park in terms of the kinds of things they do for community engagement that are different than most of the neighborhoods have to deal with. Because they're dealing with a fair-sized homeless population, they're dealing with trying to manage relationships with both Hennepin County and Minneapolis services related to, repetitive crime issues that happen downtown. And I think you're going to see different language from each of those groups because they're so embedded in those kinds of programs that are in fact engagements.
Anything else on that one? Thanks for giving me that cue, Robert. I did have a note stuck to ask about that. Okay, let's move on. East Calhoun. Kenny? Linden Hills neighborhood? Okay.
I wasn't quite sure how they did their budget. Again, it was just staff expense was literally the total of all the other items minus whatever was left over. Kind of seemed like you had some of the staff expense even down to like the penny level. And then so my question was about that. I mean, do they have staff and did they just throw that in that bucket? And then my other question was again an outlier. The festivals and events at 10,250 just seem much higher than a lot of the other neighborhoods. They do have staff.
So a general thing that I will just see how other people feel about it. What it would be helpful to me, Bill seems to have done it, some of you already have it in the spreadsheet. I would have liked to seen the budgets as best they could be fitted in a uniform spreadsheet. I know we asked for certain information, just see it in a spreadsheet. It's incredibly hard to go through those PDFs and be writing down and scribbling and trying. I don't know if anybody else has tried to do that. You have, it's clear, but it's a challenge. And I think it would be helpful if we just had a spreadsheet with those numbers in it.
And actually I've been doing that, and for most neighborhoods they fit, because they use the template, they fit fairly cleanly, and so I actually do that, so maybe I can get that out as part of the thing just beforehand. Not all neighborhoods do, which actually kind of following up on the last ones, I've still got 2 neighborhoods outstanding because they provided these huge organizational budgets without breaking them down for program budgets, so.
Okay.
Sometimes I get budgets that just don't fit in here at all.
Well, man, I'd like to say too that it'd be good if they actually delineated, here's our request, here's our budget, and we'll get to Wake Park. But for example, was it Lyndhurst the last go around had more than their allocation?
Fulton.
Fulton?
Yeah.
Sorry.
One of the neighborhoods is pushing back on that right now though, so I've got to figure out how to, because they sent a letter saying, can you give me a program budget? And they said, we gave you what we gave you.
So if you could do that for in advance of the NCEC meeting, I think that would be helpful. Great.
I think, as we go along too, like as we get into another round, if it gets to the point where we're looking at applications because their line item seems to be out of line with other neighborhoods, that we should start either putting caps in those line items or just figure that neighborhoods do them differently. You know what I mean? Because then it starts to feel like to me that this commission is overstepping its boundaries, that staff are reviewing these and staff are already reviewing these and they're understanding what neighborhoods are using their money and how they're spending on them. But if we look at one neighborhood and say, oh, that seems out of line with what other neighborhoods do, then just cap it so that we at least have a way to respond to neighborhoods about this. You're out of line with other communities.
Okay.
I appreciate that piece. For me, it's sort of the, what can I learn from them and use in my neighborhoods? And so that's.
Well, you do, but I mean, the level of detail that we're going at with these proposals for every neighborhood, I mean, what happens when we do the 3-year budgets?
I think we ought to give an award every year for the neighborhood that comes in much below, the lowest point below their allocation, right? Since, the odds of anybody wanting to get that award, which could be, whatever.
Yeah, now we're giving out
Free beer.
We don't have time to do
Robert?
Wait. More seriously.
You have a serious point.
I do have a serious point.
Okay, I'm sorry.
When I've looked through all of these things, it's very unclear whether the staff is contract or employees. And insurance implications and liability implications are different under those cases. And I think it's something...
Tax implication too.
Yes. And I think it's something that staff has to work with neighborhoods to do, because I'd be surprised if most neighborhoods understand the implications and the differences for the two different situations.
We've had neighborhoods getting for a long time.
All right.
Going forward, maybe for the future years, maybe we ought to come up with a more standardized way of reporting.
And I think what we're doing by exploring these and having Robert exploring and then discussing is we're going to create a set of learnings that we'll then use to do exactly that.
Well, it's, just a follow-up to that would be, is to ask them whether their staff's going to be contractor employees, and then list the kinds of things that are the concerns if they're employees, and list the concerns if they're going to be contract, right, in terms of both the insurance differences and tax differences that they have to deal with.
Okay, Jeff?
Excellent point, and I'd love to see a spreadsheet like is used in the NRP plans, where you can very easily see line items, dollar amounts, percentage of housing or admin, and so,
Okay.
there's no reason not to use something that seems like it has displayed information well.
You can bet, since I have put the spreadsheet together for myself, I would be very happy if someone else were doing that.
Yeah, I've actually been doing this around the world, so.
Great.
I'm glad to show you that. I apologize for that.
Lowry Hill East, questions? Northeast Park.
Two.
All right.
Again, membership dues, again, I don't know what that means, since we're
Okay.
not supposed to do that.
Yep.
And again, professional services, that's $7,500, it's just an outlier, I don't know if that means staff or what that means.
Yep, and in that one, we also have another insurance thing, but that's getting captured with the general, check out the insurance thing.
I think we can probably group the membership dues question the same.
Oh,
as-
all right, fair enough.
That's my common question. I think it's legit, but I just want to make sure they're saying to do what.
Okay, Powder Horn Park?